Amazing, Pamela.
Oh, you do, you know, you always do this. And like, don't try and big me up, because then people are going to be so disappointed. What this kind of like journey, not just motherhood, but having a child with autism, and I've got 2 other children, so I've got 3 children in total, but only 1 is autistic. But I think what this kind of journey through autism has kind of shown me is just that there are also equally, if not more, amazing people doing amazing things in this world who are trying to make such positive change and just bring so much awareness when it comes to conditions like autism. And I didn't know much about autism at all before I had Walter. Many had heard of it, and I probably would have had the same common misconceptions as many other people do when it comes to autism. You hear of it, but you don't quite really know what it is, or you associate it with maybe a character in a film, and then that's your only kind of view of what autism is. So yeah, when I had Walter and we found out he was autistic, like many, it comes as a huge shock, because you know, you hear about other conditions but you don't hear much about autism at all. So your brain kind of goes to the worst case scenario. Is he going to be like non-verbal for the rest of his life? Is he going to need you know, is he not going to become independent? Is he going to struggle socially, emotionally, mentally? You have all of these questions. And I think the key is to not think that you could answer all of them, if any, because you just don't know. You don't know. And we are learning as Walter is learning as we go through life. We've made some horrendous mistakes when it's come from a place of love and we think we're helping him, but now on reflection we're like, no, we're not going to do that again. And it's just a learning curve, isn't it? You learn about things that work and help you know, your child thrive, and equally you find things that don't help, and it's not a one size fits all approach at all. I think it's important to try these things, and if things don't work, don't be disheartened, because there's other things that you can try. And just by talking about it and connecting with like people like yourself or other families within the autism community, that really helps. I think that camaraderie really helps in terms of support, because you just, it is a struggle, I'm not gonna lie, it really is. And when you throw something like a world pandemic into it as well, it just takes it to a whole new level. And what you thought you were excelling at 6 months ago, you're completely failing at now. And that's okay. I think the key is that, you know, you need to give yourself a bit of grace and be like, you know, you are learning as they are learning as well. So much stuff has come out of having a child with autism. I think people focus on the negatives quite a lot. And I was thinking about this the other day. The day the pediatrician told us that our child has autism, the way he delivered the diagnosis to us, you would think that he would just told me that my child was going to die.
Really?
It was very much like, I'm so sorry to tell you this. And I was like, oh my God, what are they going to tell me? And it was a case of like, I'm so sorry, I'm really sorry, your child's autistic. And I was waiting for the next bit. What's the worst news? And what tell me? So I think there's so much to be learned in terms of when it comes to you know, the health professionals, and the whole diagnosis itself is stressful. It's stressful for the parents, it's stressful for like immediate family. It's not like you just get, you know, a blood test and then 7 days later you get the results. I mean, there's so much. I mean, you can understand why they're so thorough, but sometimes it can feel quite intrusive. It can feel like they're asking you questions based on your parenting skills and your parenting ability. I think there needs to be more kind of compassion and training when it comes to different ethnicities. You know, when it comes to the diagnosis, there's so many barriers when it comes to cultural barriers and language barriers and things like, and religion and things like that. Again, just how there's not a one size fits all approach when it comes to managing behavior and expectations of your child. There isn't a one size approach fits all when it comes to the diagnosis. And it's not just the diagnosis, it's the aftercare. In some ways, the diagnosis is almost like the easiest part. You get it, and then you think something magical is going to happen, and someone's going to tell you exactly what to do or what not to do. And it's kind of like you're delivered the information, you're given the leaflets, and then it's kind of like, be on your way. Figure it out yourself. So where is the aftercare? Where is the support? And where is it for those who are really, really vulnerable and maybe have got, you know, like I said, language barriers and cultural barriers and things like that? So we need to be thinking about that. We need to think about pre and post diagnosis as well. I think that's really important.
And what kind of helped you through that journey? Because I know you're not the first person that I've spoken to that says, oh, well, you get a diagnosis and then you get these papers. I went to meet a parent a couple of months back, and she said, oh, they gave me a diagnosis and then they handed me this stack of papers and then they said, read all of this. And she's like, what do I do? Because all of this doesn't necessarily apply to my specific child.
Exactly.
So it's like, what did you do at that point?
Honestly, I think I had about a week and a half of crying because I was just so overwhelmed. I think I had this, you know, misconception that when I get the diagnosis, then they're going to be like, right, this is what you need to do. This is what you need to try. And I didn't get that. I just got information, you know, written information. And like you said, that's not always going to apply to people of different backgrounds. So for me, I literally had a period, and I don't like to use the word grieving, but I literally had a period where I was just like, okay, I'm so overwhelmed. I need to kind of sit with these emotions and deal with it. I don't want to, like, you know, suppress them for them to manifest into something bigger later on. So I think for me personally, and again, there's no right or wrong answer. I did have that period of feeling a little bit sorry for myself, because you start to question whether it's something you've done, whether your partner's done something, whether it's something genetic, or you have so many questions. And instead of reaching out to people, because you may not necessarily know who to reach out to, I reached out to Google, which is probably the worst thing you could possibly do. Do you know what I mean? And then you're just inundated with so much information that you can't digest, and some of it's not applicable to you, some of it doesn't make sense, there's a lot of jargon in there as well, and you just come away feeling like even more lost than you did before. So then after that, I just kind of went, and I think this is where social media did really, really help me. And I love social media for this fact. For example, we've been able to connect through social media, and if it wasn't for that, I probably wouldn't have, you know, connected with you. So I did kind of go on a social media hunt, look at autism communities, local, nationally. I started to follow people who maybe have got autistic children, or like yourself, have got experience with autistic children. I looked at early years providers to see what they were suggesting, and just through kind of like going through some kind of like rabbit hole, I kind of reached certain people, and I connected with them, and they were like, you know what, you should speak to so-and-so person, or you should do this. And that's how I've managed to kind of build a really strong foundation when it comes to support in the autism community. Now, I shouldn't have to do that. Do you know what I mean? I shouldn't have to spend weeks of going through social media to be asking for help. We should be able to have some kind of like hub where it's like, okay, your child is being diagnosed, so these are the next steps. Now, if you come from such and such background, or, you know, do you know what I mean? Then look at this and look at that. This is what we should be having. But there's nothing tangible. There's nothing set in place other than a few leaflets, which don't really depict what autism is. It's very much, you know, a leaflet with maybe, you know, a family of 4, and maybe they might be look like quite middle class and all the rest of it. So, you know, for someone who comes from a working class background, and maybe English is their second language, and then maybe they're quite, you know, they've got religion in there as well, that is not going to appeal to them. They're not going to be able to look at that at face value and think, this is something I want to read because that looks like me, that could be our family. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, I think for me, I had to literally go through the process of feeling, you know, worried, sad, anxious, deal with that, and know that's absolutely natural and absolutely normal to feel that. And then I had to really actively go and seek out that kind of support.
It's
So
funny that you
that's
say
what
that.
happened to me.
I feel like kind of working, especially in school, coming into that's kind of one of the biggest things that I realized, that why is it that it's so hard to find anything? And I think there's so many great communities and there's so many great organizations that are out there that
Yeah.
offer this support. But I also think, why do parents have to search for so long before they're able to find that? And I just think that it didn't make sense to me, which is why I decided to go on this journey. But I think
Yeah.
your journey is amazing, and your book. Do you want to just talk a bit about kind of how you got into doing that?
Yeah. Yeah, so it kind of I love telling this story because A, I get to talk about my son, who is just like the best thing in the world. All my children are, and B, it kind of makes me makes me emotional because I kind of think that my story is not any different to anyone else's out there as well.
Mm.
So Walter is 7 now. He turned 7 recently, and up until about 4.5, he was non-verbal, couldn't communicate at all. He made noises and things like that, but there was no actual words or sentences and things like that. But we realized since the day he was born that he had this fascination with books. Like every picture we have, 95% of them is him holding a book in his hand, even now. So obviously, you know, you have children, you get books, you want to fill their bookshelf with loads and loads and loads of books. And we had all the kind of like, you know, popular regular books on there, which are great. And we were actively like reading to him, even though he couldn't, you know, recite the words back to us. But he used to get so excited with the visuals and he'll be pointing at the words on there. So obviously we were trying to encourage him to speak. And then we noticed that he used to go and get his book or a book and he would repetitively be like tapping at the page. So if it had a picture of a child, like, you know, with a drink or on the toilet or something like that, he would just constantly tap at it for like 10 minutes at a time. And my husband was like, do you think he's trying to tell us he wants a drink? And I was like, I don't know, maybe he is. And long story short, he was. That was literally his way of communicating. And if he couldn't find a certain book with a picture on that he wanted, then we would have the biggest meltdowns. Now, to anyone else, they'll be like, why is that child getting so angry? Because they can't find a book. But to him, that was his, literally, like his way of communicating. And like you know, a lot of autistic children thrive on routine and structure and familiarity. And for him, he had to have certain books in a certain place, and we had to read them 20,000 times a day. Do you know what I mean? But for him, it was like reading it for the first time every single time, the excitement, the joy that he got. So yeah, we started to realize that was his way of communicating. So I thought, right, I'm going to get some books where, you know, there's an autistic character, or I should mention that my children are mixed race. So there's mixed race characters in there. And I really, really struggled. Yeah. Now, I don't know whether this is me being a little bit ignorant, but I remember being the only black child in my school, and I come from a very kind of rural town in Staffordshire, predominantly white. So growing up, I just got used to not seeing books where there was a black character on there, which is really sad. But I've just got used to it. I just thought there was no books, or if there were any books, it was very kind of, you know, that negative, stereotypical view of a black person who may come from Africa, who lives in the jungle, who roams around with animals, and those kind of things. So as I've grown up, I've just kind of accepted, which is we shouldn't, that there's no books with our narrative and our stories in there. So when I had children, I assumed that there must be books. Yeah, because we're talking like 30 years later, there must be books now. And could I find a book where a, you know, black, Asian, minority ethnic character was the hero of the book? I could, but I had to struggle for it and search for it, and there wasn't that many. And then to find a child from ethnic minority background who has a disability as well, who is also the hero of the book, was just like
Impossible.
impossible.
Yeah.
Or they were from America and
Mm.
it was really hard to get. And I was just like, seriously? Why? Why? Like, we're still having the same issues 30 years later than when I was a child. And I just thought, like, how are we supposed to teach children about differences, A, and B, we should be celebrating and champion those differences. If they've got no resources, if they've got no books, if they can't see a person with a disability from an ethnic minority background in a book, they can't see them on mainstream TV, like, how are they supposed to learn? So if it's not there, it's not being taught. And if it's not being taught, then these children grow up thinking that these people don't exist. And then when they do meet someone like that, how are they supposed to interact with that person? They see them, it's so far removed from their reality that they don't even know how to interact with them. They don't know what to say. So what they do say ends up becoming quite, you know, it becomes, you know, we get discrimination thrown in there as well, or we get, you can't use those words. And then they're like, well, why can't we use those words? Because they've never been taught. Now, this is no excuse on their part, but it kind of opens up the conversation as to why these books are not being made. Or if they are being made, why is it that people like me are having to self-publish their own books? Why are we not seeing, you know, the top publishing house companies, you know, saying, you know, what, we need more diverse books. And not only do we need more diverse books, we are going to produce more diverse books. And the books that are being made are going to be written by people who have got a instant connection or has got experience or comes from that, you know, comes from that community. And I feel like we're starting to maybe make a few steps. But for me, I was just like, okay, if it's not out there, it's needed. So I'm going to just do it myself, which was really hard. Really hard. I went into it quite open-mindedly and I went in there quite enthusiastically, which is great, but I wasn't quite prepared with like the financial strains on there and doing all the self promotion. The writing the book was the fun part, was the easiest part, which what I thought was going to be the hardest. It was going out there and telling it to the world and showing it to the world, whilst, you know, looking after 3 kids as well. So that was a struggle, but it was a struggle that I'm so glad that I went through because, yeah, I'm super proud of the book. The book is called Buster Finds His Beat. So it's an autism-friendly story that encourages empathy and understanding. And I was very aware that if I want to write a book, I don't want to just have a book about an autistic character and all the struggles that it goes through and all the rest of it. I want there to be some life and some fun in there as well, just like any other children's book. So yeah, it doesn't even mention that the child's autistic in there. It just mentions that he struggles with certain noises and why he has to use ear defenders to kind of soften those, you know, the noises around him. So it encourages children to ask the questions. Why does he find certain noises upsetting? Why does he wear those ear defenders? But then it moves into like a really fun part of the story as well. And it's really important to have that, I think, with books, because children are naturally inquisitive. They want to ask those questions and they should be able to ask those questions. And we should be able to open up the dialogue and have the conversation around ethnicity, around disabilities, around different backgrounds and religion. And it's really important that we do.
I definitely agree. I think diversity often ignores or doesn't put as much focus as it should on disabilities, and that includes children with disabilities. Teaching in a mainstream school, you always see children that have autism, and sometimes they have their station in the back, and the children aren't always aware of specifically why he might get upset sometimes, why she might have ear defenders, what things make them irritated, why sometimes they just don't want to play with the rest of the children. And I think there needs to be more of that education in schools, and I think books like that will help to educate the children because they're child friendly. I think there's not enough done in schools these days, where not just educating the teachers and educating everyone else, but also paying attention to the children that are in that classroom, because sometimes they just need to be able to understand that you need to be a bit more understanding, you need to be a bit more empathetic to this child and be more inclusive and include them in your playtimes and make that extra effort. And I think children's books are a great way of being able to do that for your child, because it's friendly, it's child friendly, instead of just being told. It explains it a bit better.
Yeah, and I think like what tends to happen is that we start having these conversations in secondary school, and at that point it's just like, why are we not having them in nursery and in infant and primary schools? You know, it shouldn't be a conversation we have when it becomes an issue. Do you know what I mean? It should be a conversation, the same conversation we have about anything else when it comes to children. It's really important to have it, and I think why a lot of people don't have it is because they feel like they don't have the answers, and that's fine. If your child is reading, for example, a book like mine or any other book, and they're asking questions, and as a parent you're like, I don't know, actually, tell your child that. Don't make an answer up or just ignore them, because by ignoring them it's making them think like, oh, I shouldn't have asked that question, that's something that I shouldn't mention again, and it makes it all like a bit weird, a bit awkward, and it doesn't need to be at all. My 3-year-old, our middle child, sometimes he asks me, why is Walter doing that with his fingers? And when Walter gets quite agitated, he starts clicking or flapping his hands a lot, or he starts like stimming. And at the moment we're over lockdown, well, we're back in lockdown, the last lockdown, his stimming became a lot more severe. His behaviour changed quite a lot as well, and that's understandably because his routine has been interrupted. But yeah, Stanley, my 3-year-old, one day when Walter was really struggling, he was like, Mummy, why is Walter always clicking and flapping and doing that and shaking his head when he gets angry? And I was like, you know what, that's a really, really important question. It's a really good question. I can't actually give you the exact reason why he does it, but for Walter, when he gets upset, doing that makes him feel better. So just when you get upset, you cry and then you come and talk to Mummy. Sometimes Walter can't find the words to tell Mummy what's wrong, so for him he does that as a way of calming himself down. That was it, end of conversation. Didn't need to have the conversation again. He's not asked me since. Maybe it wasn't like the technical answer, but why does a 3-year-old need a technical answer? They don't. You know, they've asked you a question because they're inquisitive and they've noticed something. So you're doing the person a huge disservice if you're not taking the time to at least say, I don't know, but I'll find out, it's a good question. Or if you do know, speak to them about it. It's really important, because then it doesn't become a taboo, it doesn't become this really awkward thing. And everyone is different, and this is what we need to be saying from day dot. Like, everyone is different, and that is good. Bloody brilliant. So if you find someone who is different, hang on to them. It's good. We should be celebrating that. But yeah, I just feel when it comes to diversity, we instantly think of maybe ethnicity or background, and then right at the bottom we start talking about disability. And when we think of disability, a lot of people, they think of wheelchair bound, and there's like, there's so many different disabilities out there. So why are we not taking the time to learn about them? You know, the best thing you can do is learn about someone who's completely different from you. You know, comes from a different background, looks completely different from you, which is why I'm always actively searching books for my children that A, they can relate to, and B, they can't. So then we learn about it. Dinosaurs are great. Like, don't get me wrong, there's loads of books about dinosaurs.
They don't exist anymore though.
No offense to anyone writing dinosaur books. I mean, write them, great, but why don't you write a dinosaur book about a dinosaur who's got autism, or a dinosaur book from a dinosaur he's only got one single parent family? Like, you know, make it diverse that way. You don't actually have to have human characters in the book. They can be animals, but they still need to kind of highlight that that issue of diversity. Like, it's just, yeah. But it's easy for me and you to be like, yeah, we need more of this. But if you're not part of it and you're so detached from it, I can understand why people are just like, why do we need it? Yeah. If your son or child is neurotypical, then dinosaurs, princesses, and all the rest, that's going to serve their purpose because they can relate to that. I get it. But at the same time, we all want our children to grow up as decent human beings who literally can show empathy and understanding. So the quickest, easiest way to do that is through books. Give them the books where they're having to ask you those questions, and maybe you're going to have some degree of awkwardness in the conversation. There's so much stuff that I don't know, and I think it's a key opportunity for me to learn and pass it on to my children as well.
I think I just want to say hello to anyone that's just kind of recently joined. If you've got any questions, Pamela is amazing. She's got 2 children, 1 son that has autism,
Right.
3 children. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Over more so
1, 2, 3.
And she's the author of Just Like Me Stories. Having 3 children, I just kind of want to touch on that a bit. How do you balance that? So I know you mentioned that you've got you explained to your 3-year-old child that Walter is just different, as everyone else is. Everyone is different in this world. There's no one that is the same. If everyone was the same, it would be boring. There's just some people just have additional needs, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just the same thing. They're just a normal, different person. But how do you kind of support that family household with your 3 children and balancing that time?
It's a really good question. I don't really have a concrete answer for you because I haven't found that winning formula. I don't know if there really is one. We take it a day at a time, and there's things that I'm learning, especially this year. For example, half term was recently, and we've noticed that whenever we've done anything with the family, it's always been, is it going to be okay for Walter? Is it going to be too loud? Is it going to be too many people? Is he going to have the food that he eats? Because again, one of the things with Walter, he's very restrictive when it comes to his diet. He has the same food every single day, with very rare exceptions. So we're always thinking ahead as a family, is it going to be suitable for Walter? Which is normal, which is natural. And then I found myself asking, but what about the other 2? Now, the 3rd one, he's like 20 months. So, he's a baby still. But Stanley, he's, although he's 3, he's already surpassed Walter when it comes to like speaking and communicating. And you have that parent guilt. You do. I've had it a lot, and I keep thinking, we just assume because Stanley can talk and communicate, that he's fine. Do you know what I mean? And I said to my husband, we need to do this half term. We need to do things separately with the children because we're always doing things to accommodate Walter. Absolutely. And Stanley loves what we do as well. But Stanley's needs are very different to Walter. What he's interested in is very, very different to Walter. So we had a day out with Stanley. It was just me, Stanley, and my husband, Alex. And we had such an amazing time. Such an amazing time. I think I needed it more than Stanley, to be fair. But yeah, we took him to like the Sea Life Centre because he's obsessed with animals and dinosaurs, funny enough. So we had like a whole day out. And it was just such joy. It was so lovely. And then another day we took Walter out. And yeah, so it is, like you said, it's a juggling act. It really, really is. But we have to keep having the conversation with Stanley. And we had it on very early on that, Walter has got needs. And there's certain times he's going to want to play with you. There's other times he's not going to want to play with you. There's other times you're going to put a TV program on and Walter's going to find a noise on that TV program so overwhelming that we're going to have to turn the TV program off. And I know it's really unfair for you because you want to watch it, but you have to understand that really hurts him. Yeah, it makes him feel really, really scared. So having these conversations early on has really, really helped us as a family. Now, 80% of the time, Stanley's really, really good about it. He's 3. Yeah, ask me in another 5 years' time, whether he's still okay about it. He may not be, and that's something that we're just going to have to prepare ourselves for. And it's understandable, because we have to although we've got 3 children, we love them equally, absolutely. Whenever we do something, it's always, how's water going to feel? And that's the first thing we go to. There's certain things that we can't do as a family, because I know it will cause so much upset that no one in the family is going to have a great time, so we don't do it. It's difficult. Sometimes I feel like I am having to be 3 different parents to 3 different children, and emotionally that becomes really exhausting. But then there's other times where that exhaustion is totally worth it, when we hit a milestone, and it's those little milestones, and we make our own milestones in this family. Absolutely. We don't do the whole, oh, he should be talking about now, he should be saying a sentence, he should be eating this, he should be doing that.
I love
you put
that.
so much pressure You should put so much pressure on yourself if you are conforming to a piece of paper or some data that says, you know, by this age your autistic child should be doing this. Because how are you going to feel if your child doesn't do that? How would you feel if your child wasn't autistic and didn't hit those milestones? Do you know what I mean? As a parent, you start to doubt yourself. You start to doubt your parenting skills. You get angry, you get frustrated, and that serves no one. So what is the point? So we always make our own milestones here. And it's not a milestone that is by a specific date. He has to have achieved this. It's something that we sit down together and we think, okay, so this is an area that he's struggling in at the moment. So this is going to be our focus. So it could be food related, for example. So we're going to start to introduce a food to him, put it next to his plate. If he doesn't eat it, doesn't eat it. If he smells it, oh, that's a milestone. If he licks it, oh my God, it's like winning the lottery. If he chews and digests it, my God, that's it, I'm dead. Do you know what I mean? So these are the things that we do. And when they achieve that milestone, you could be trying for like 6, 9, 12 months just for them to sniff something different. But when they do it, it's like all that hard work, all that frustration, all that self-doubt and self-criticism that we give to ourselves as parents, it's just gone. Yeah, because it shows that it's working, and it just shows that they're doing it at their own pace, in their own time. So you have to adjust to their time and their speed. It's not a case of they need to adjust to your speed and your time. It's the other way around. And that's probably the biggest thing I've learned from having an autistic child is not getting them to think how I think. It's I've got to start to learn how they think and how they see the world. Because the moment you do, you just take the pressure off. Do you know what I mean? It's like it all becomes a little bit more manageable because you know they're not giving you a hard time. They're just going through a bit of a hard time at the moment, and that's the difference. So I manage it the best as I can. Some days I think aced it today, and other days I'm just like, what the hell? And I'm literally just like curled up on my bed going, what have I done? What am I not doing right? And it's so good because then you speak to other people, or you might just see someone else has put a comment up going, you know, she really struggled today mentally with my child. He's been lashing out at me, and you feel guilty because when your child lashes out at you, you take it personally. Of course you do. If anyone was to hit you, you take it personally. And it's having to kind of manage your expectations, their expectations, and knowing that, you know, you are going to get some days, weeks, maybe even months where you are constantly feel like you are not getting anywhere and you're treading through water. But you will get to the surface and you will get stronger for it every single time, for sure.
Can I just say, I love the fact that you create your own milestones. I think everyone should, because it's not just children with autism. Every individual should create their own milestones. You think about like how you as a person are. Not everyone reaches the same thing by the time that they're 30. Not everyone reaches the same thing by the time that they're 35, 40, 50. Everyone reaches their own milestones at their own ages. But for some reason, when you get to school and they're in primary school or they're even in secondary school, it's, oh, they need to get these grades. They need to be at this level by this age. In reality, no, because we're not created as clones. Not everyone is the same. So how are you going to expect a child to reach that level at the age that you say that they're meant to reach it. It doesn't make sense. Like, as long as they're able to get to where they're meant to be for themselves as an individual, then I think that's where they're meant to be. Like, I think that's
Absolutely.
such a healthy mindset. So healthy.
Absolutely. And I think, you know, we see things like how much of both adults and children are struggling with their mental health massively. And this is not just children with additional needs, this is everyone. Yeah. And the thing is, with like mental health, it has no discrimination. Yeah, it can affect everyone from every age, every gender, every background, every ability. Yeah. So although I totally believe and agree that there's certain things in the curriculum that need to be taught, I also really think that we should be teaching about mental health, and how to look after our mental health, and what we should do when we feel like our mental health is declining. These are the things that I think are really important, because we say about our children, oh, we just want them to be happy. Just want them to be happy. And that's such a massive like pressure to put on your child. I just want you to be happy. Yeah. And it's like, yeah, but how are they going to make themselves happy? If they don't feel happy, then they're automatically feeling like I'm failing then. There's something wrong with me. And if you're already feeling that, but maybe you have got additional needs on top of that as well, and you're dealing with that or not dealing with it because you're not getting the right amount of support that you need, or you've got no outlet to kind of tell people how you're feeling. And also, we rely on words to tell people how we're feeling. Some people cannot use their words to tell them how they're feeling. They've got other ways of doing it. So it could be the clicking of their hands. It could be the head banging or the shaking. Yeah. It could be all these stimuli that they've got. Or maybe they haven't got something that's helping them. So it's coming out through frustration and anger and kicking and shouting and spitting and all these kind of things. So we have to really look when we're raising our children, and when they're in that school environment, we have to really assess the things that we're teaching them now. Are they going to benefit them in 10, 20 years plus time? Are they going to really need these skills? Are they going to really have to hone in on these skills? Because it's great to be academic and flying through that and getting your A grades, or whatever it is that it is now, and you go to your university and you're getting your 2-1 or your first, brilliant, because that shows that you've worked hard, and that is something that should be celebrated. And then you get that high flying job and you're making the money and you've got the status, and then something happens, and you don't feel happy. You've got all of these external things around you, but you are like dying inside. And you feel sad, you feel empty, you feel like you're not good enough. Now, that algebra that you learned 20 years ago, is that helping you with how you're feeling right about now? And these are things, there's not enough emphasis on it. I feel like there's a lot of emphasis on mental health when it gets to the point when someone is struggling really, really bad.
It's too late.
And it's a little bit too late then. And not only that, they can't even access the resources that they need anyway. So yes, it's important to work hard, absolutely. But working hard doesn't mean that you have got an A grade. You can get a D grade, E, whatever it is. You could still have worked exceptionally hard because you are working hard and it's your milestone, which is completely different to everyone else. There's so much focus on grades and the academic achievement. And not enough on like, okay, so what makes you happy? What are your passions? The answer could be like, I have no idea what makes me happy. I have no idea what I want to be in 5 years' time. Why do we ask children, what do you want to be? Why do you go for an interview and they say, where do you see yourself in 5 years' time? Who knows? Did you see a world pandemic happening 5 years ago? No. Like, why are you asking these questions? Who knows? And if you don't know, you can fully say, I have no idea. I'm 37 years old. Did I think 5 years ago, 10 years ago, that I was going to be writing children's books? Absolutely not. That just shows you how time changes your perception of what brings you joy. It's evolving all the time. And I think we should be celebrating that and promoting that and saying, you know, if what you're doing now makes you happy, go for it. 100%. Throw yourself into it. Learn about it. Go and speak to other people in your industry, and learn from them. Learn what they did right and learn what they did wrong. But don't beat yourself up in another 5 years' time. You're like, I don't want to do that anymore because I found a new passion.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? We can keep changing.
Yeah. That's literally how life is. It's constantly evolving. At one point you're interested in one thing, another point you're interested in something else. And it's exactly the same thing with children. It's like we expect children to become clones and all achieve this master grade, but what if what they're really interested in is the piano? What if what they're really interested in is football? Or what if that's what they're meant to do? And it's like I saw a non-verbal autistic child teach himself to play piano, and
Brilliant.
he's not going to sit there and read and write because that's not, he didn't enjoy it. Like it wasn't where his level was at that moment. I mean, in the future possibly he could also achieve that, but when he sat down with the piano, it was amazing. And he sat there and he taught himself to play, and he was playing it brilliantly, better than I could even play piano. I can't play piano, but it just shows you, like, I'm not even going to try it. But why don't we allow children to follow their passions? And I think if you do that more, instead of pushing them to achieve some arbitrary grade that, or learn some, I don't know, last time I used pi r squared in my life. Why do we teach it to kids?
And also, I think it's really important that, like, just because a child's autistic doesn't mean he's going to be amazing at the piano. Doesn't mean he's going to be amazing at maths. Like, do you know what I mean? Also, don't be thinking like, you know, he's got to do this amazing thing now he's autistic. Like, every child is unique and every child has their strengths. And I think it's that you have to figure out, and they have to figure out what that is. And it doesn't have to be anything that's going to be revolutionary. It's like going to cure anything. Do you know what I mean? It can literally be probably what I hold as like the highest value, being really kind to people. Showing kindness and showing compassion. That is what we need. I mean, you see it all over social media now. Be kind, be kind, be kind, be kind. Hashtag be kind. But the meaning behind being kind, are you as an adult being kind? Are you showing compassion when you see someone who has got additional needs, or you see that child in the supermarket kicking, throwing, shouting, and your brain instantly goes to that child, even worse parent, I wouldn't let my child do that. Do you know what I mean? You don't know what's triggered that. That child could have heard something, smelt something, and they can't communicate how they're feeling. So that absolute fear has just manifested into, like, the only thing I can do is throw myself on the floor. This is so overwhelming, I can't cope. But of course we don't think that. We don't think about the backstory. We just see, and then we instantly make a judgment call. And that judgment tends to be judging child, judging parent. And what is the point? Is your judgment going to help that child? Is it going to help support that mother or father? No, it's not. So why do it? So you can't do that and then go on social media and start saying to people, be kind. Because kindness isn't just saying like, oh, you look lovely today and whatever. Do you know what I mean? There's kindness is the thoughts that you have that you might not just verbalize. It's those judgments, that those thinking of someone when you don't really know them. That's what being kind, and also being kind to yourself as well as parents, regardless of whether you have children with additional needs. Like, if you've had a really bad day and you're sitting there bashing yourself, thinking that you are the worst parent ever, that's not being kind to yourself either. So it goes two ways.
I definitely agree. I think self-care, self-compassion are so important, and I also think the world needs more education, because then I think those judging stares and the judging before they even really fully understand what's happening with a child, especially when you're outside, I think the world just needs to be better educated, and parents as well to be more compassionate with themselves when they might not have got it right, because you're not going to get it right all the time. So
I think the judgment comes from, again, lack of understanding, lack of education. And I think as humans we have this weird thing that we do when we feel awkward about a situation. We want to make the other person feel more awkward. You know what I mean? So for someone who is like going about their shopping and then they just start singing, a child, you know, being verbally aggressive or maybe physically aggressive and pulling things off the shelves and shouting and screaming. Now, that's not nice to see for anyone. It's not nice to see as a stranger. It's not nice to see your child, because you know that your child is struggling really bad. And you feel quite helpless in that moment. Now, for anyone else who is there, that makes them feel quite awkward. They don't know whether they should look or not look, or should they help or not help. And I get it. Yeah, it is a bit of a weird situation to be in. It's not a nice situation to be. But like I said, judging that parent, that's not going to make your awkwardness go away. And I say this with like well-meaning, but it's not about you during that moment. Yeah, like you can carry on with your shopping and that's fine, you know what I mean? The rest of your day is not going to get disrupted by that one incident. Yeah, but for that child and for that mother, the mother doesn't know whether that child's going to come out with it in the next 10 seconds or the next 10 minutes. I've been in situations where I've been sitting on the floor in Sainsbury's hugging Walter because I know that brings him out of it. And I'm literally hugging him because I am thinking if I let go, he's going to lash out. And B, I know this is what I need to calm him down. I've had to sit on the floor, hug him, singing Five Little Ducks on repeat over and over. Now that's awkward for me. Do you know what I mean? That's awkward. People are just walking, stepping over us. That is really, really awkward. And but I know that's what he needs. And at the end of the day, it's all about him. Yeah, I can get over that hour of embarrassment or whatever. But for him, like, he's really struggling. Really struggling. So as a parent, I have to think, like, what can I do to help him? What can I do to make him feel like he's safe? Because at the moment, he doesn't feel safe, which is why he's lashing out. So, yeah, it's hard. It is really, really hard. And to deal with that, and then you can feel the judgy eyes and stares and the rest of it. And then that doesn't make you feel good as a person. And I don't think it can make anyone else feel good either. I mean, like, surely, do you know what I mean? To kind of be standing there staring at someone, giving them judgy eyes. Why are you doing that? Like,
you don't actually know what the situation is or why the person's there. That's why I think these things need to be normalized. Like, seeing that should be normal. Yes, a parent is consoling her child because her child is upset. Regardless of whether they have additional needs or not. Yes, they are. Your child is upset, you're consoling your child. That shouldn't be a thing where people are walking by and saying, oh, like, I think there just needs to be, I don't know what, but they just need to be more acceptance and more understanding of everyday people. Because I just think I was on the bus the other day and I saw a child that was really, really upset and they were really, really crying. And then I just saw people staring at the parent and I thought, well, you don't actually know what's happened with that child. So why are you staring at them? Like, and are your stares going to help that child? Are they going to do anything?
I think they think that, like, when staring or tutting, it's going to shut the child up. What
is that going to do for them?
Like, it's going to instantly make them stop. It's not. I don't think anything
positive. Just mind your own business.
Carry on.
Go about your own day and leave that family to help.
Because you really don't know how much that parent has had to psych themselves up to even get the child in the car, to drive to the supermarket. Yeah. Like, I'll give an example. When Walter was little, he used to get really upset if we went a different route to a supermarket. It's like he knew the route. And there's one day the road was closed, so there was a diversion. So we had to go a different way. So that instantly was just like anxiety. Where we go, this is not the same route. So already, anxiety levels have been heightened. And then we get to the supermarket. So he's already feeling quite heightened by that. He starts to do stimming. So he's clicking his hands and he's shaking a lot. So you're getting people staring and thinking, okay, what's wrong with your child? And then I mentioned to you that Walter likes visuals, so he likes to see words. So again, his favourite thing is to read, because he can read now. Read the signs in the shop. So where it says like dairy or fruit and veg or whatever it is. So he used to point to it. Now one day the dairy sign had been removed off the wall. So he was shouting and screaming because he couldn't understand why it's gone. Because in his brain, the dairy sign is always there. You take the same route to the supermarket, but today we've had to deviate. So that's caused anxiety. And now I've got to my safe space, my supermarket, where I know where everything is. And now the dairy sign is gone. So could you imagine? It was like, oh my God. Meltdown, sensory overload, complete and utter meltdown. And again, you don't know how much that parents had to think about the steps. Even before they even got to the supermarket, they're thinking I have to do the same route, yeah? And maybe the child has a snack when they get to the supermarket, so I have to make sure I've got the same snack in my bag, yeah? And all the rest of it. So already, for a parent, it's not just a quick, let's get in the car, let's just quickly go and buy a pint of milk. You've had to really psych yourself up. You've had to preempt what could happen. And you can't always do that. So when you have done that, and then you've got to the supermarket, had the meltdown, then you've got parents or people in general just like looking, tutting, going, oh, control your child. It breaks your heart, and a part of you dies every single time, because you're just like, you take for granted how easy it is for you to just come into a supermarket with a neurotypical child and it's fine, yeah? But for us with additional needs, we have to really think ahead and almost have like a backup plan in case things go wrong or doesn't go their way. So yeah, it's having these conversations is going to make people think, because unless we don't have these conversations, we're just going to get tarnished with the bad parent, difficult child. And like I said, that labeling of anyone is just no good. It doesn't serve anyone. It doesn't make the world a better place. It doesn't make you a better human, and it doesn't make us better parents by you telling us what we should be, or how we should parent our children.
Definitely agree.
Yeah, it's just. I saw something today actually. I was going to message you before we came on because I just couldn't believe it, but I could and I couldn't. I don't know if you've seen it. So something popped up on Twitter today, and it is I think they're teenagers or maybe young adults. I don't know. But they've done a video, and they are mimicking Katie Price and her son Harvey. Now, her son Harvey is autistic. He's got loads of medical conditions as well, and loads of additional needs, and loads of a genetic condition as well. So, the two people are just mimicking, taking the mick. So the girl is pretending to be Katie, and the boy is pretending to be Harvey. And they've even gone to the extreme of black facing, because Harvey's mixed race. I'll send you the link. Oh my God. So, so the boy's pretending to be a child with autistic child, a child with additional needs, and she's pretending to be Katie. And I just think, how has this not been taken down already? And also, how have we got to the point now where we feel that we can take the mick out of a child, a person, with additional need, anyone, anyway, but I'm just using this as an example. How can you think that is okay? Because in your head, you were doing this for likes, you're doing this for validation, you're doing this for comments, for people to say, that's so funny, ha ha ha, you're amazing, all the rest of it. You're doing it to big up your YouTube followers or whatever it is that you're doing it, yeah? You are so far removed from empathy that you think that's okay. You think that you can blackface, you think that you can be racist, discriminative against those who have got additional needs, who've got a disability, because all you're thinking about is how many likes you're going to have. And I just think, because Harvey, a person like Harvey, is so removed from their life, they probably never ever met a person like that. So they almost feel like that person is almost like a fantasy person, doesn't really exist. So therefore, we can just take the piss. It's absolutely fine. And put it on social media, and it's not going to hurt anybody, because we're just doing it for a laugh. How are we so removed? How are we allowing our children to think that that's okay?
I think like what needs to be done to, because that obviously comes from a lack of awareness, a lack of knowledge. There's not enough out there that are making it aware that yes, there are children and that have additional needs, and it's a normal thing. And I mean, I think things like that are definitely ignorant, and I think there's always going to be some sort of ignorant people in this world that just don't really have anything to contribute. But I think in the general world population, I think something needs to be done, because to see parents out there that are with their children, and to see strangers and outsiders looking in and saying, oh, why this and why that, and judging based on something that they're not aware of, I think, why is that possible today? Like, I think either
it's almost like they've got like
education or something.
Yeah, it's almost like it dehumanizes them. It's like they don't see them as human beings. Do you know what I mean? It's almost like, because I've got no experience or relationship or anything with someone who looks or acts like that, that I'm just gonna almost imagine like they don't even exist, like they're not human. It's heartbreaking, absolutely heartbreaking. And yeah, I think
it needs to be normalized. Like I think there's this thing of, oh, I don't see it, or I'm not around it, so I don't know about it. But I think why is that? Like, it's not just, it shouldn't just be, say for example, lots of parents, when they get a diagnosis, they have to search and they have to look until they find. But I think, why is it that it's that hidden? Like, why is special needs, additional needs, why is it not just out there more? Why is it not put in the public eye more? Like, why is it so hidden away? Like, I think if there was that reduction in stigma, if there was more awareness, if more people, if it was normalized as it should be, because every child is just a child. Like, regardless, every child is different. Every individual is different. So these things the world should be aware of. Yes, there are people that are different, because we're not all clones. But I just don't understand why it's so hard, why it's such a like undercover thing, as you were saying in the beginning, when you were parent, when lots of
I think they forget also that those with disabilities will contribute so much to society as well. Yeah. I think there's a mentality that they're just going to drain our resources. Like, no, there's so many people who have got additional needs, disabilities, have contributed a ridiculous amount of society, and they're still doing it to this day. Well, you have to give them the platform. You've got to give them a chance. You've got to give them the opportunities, the same opportunities as everybody else. Because if you remove those opportunities, and they're not left with anything. Yeah, there's so much. Like you said, everyone is different. Everyone has got their different strengths and their different abilities and things like that. But we should also, just how we do with neurotypical children, we try and find out what their strengths are, what their passions are, and then we try and give them the tools and resources and encouragement so that they can thrive in whatever direction they want to. We should be doing exactly the same with children with abilities. Granted, it may take longer to find out what they are, what their passions are, but surely it's worth it. I mean, they are the same as everybody else. Their learning journey through life is going to be completely different. Whilst a neurotypical child's life journey will be quite linear, ours is like that. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, but we're still going to get
children. Their journey is not like that. I don't think anyone's journey is like that.
Yeah. Like, I think from a curriculum education point of view, they see neurotypical children as, you do this, 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 and then you are going to be open up to loads of opportunities where then you can do that. But with a child with disabilities, they may be going to mainstream school and not have that one-to-one support that they need. Or, do you know what I mean? So, or you could have a child who has got additional needs, and they obviously need to have more, maybe support in a specialist school, but maybe they don't have a specialist school near them, so they can't go to mainstream, because mainstream are just like, we can't cater for you. They haven't got a specialist school. So there's so many children who are just not in any education and are just at home. So what are we doing for those children it's almost like they're just being like forgotten about.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think education is. I mean, I've been being a teacher, and like you just see, some schools do it so well, and they give
Mm.
that child that one-to-one support, and they're there for their child, and they adapt the curriculum, and they give them everything that they need. And then there's schools that don't, and I think I think to say the least, that's still, it's just, I
Mm.
mean, I just think it, as hard as it is. I was having this conversation with someone the other day, and they were like, "Why should parents have to fight for their child?" And I agree. Why should they? Parents shouldn't have to fight for their child, but it is the parents that know what their child is entitled to and are pushing for that in the schools that end up getting their child what they need. And it, I think that part is really sad. That as a parent of a neurotypical child might not have to go through so much, might not have to push as hard, whereas a child that has additional needs, their parents might have to constantly push. And if they're, I mean, if you're in a postcode lottery where you get really good schools around you, then that's great. And if not, you have to kind of go and keep going until
Mm.
your child's getting that support that they need, which I think is really sad. But I think your child also needs that, as hard as it is, and they need you to push for them because
Mm-hmm. Because no one else will.
yeah, yeah,
It is. It's a struggle. It's frustrating. You feel like sometimes you're just banging your head
mm,
against a brick wall. I mean, we're fortunate that we have got an amazing school
mm,
um, for Water. He started in mainstream, and then we pulled him out quite quickly because he was just almost regressing, if
yeah,
anything, in
yeah,
there. Um, and yeah, I get, like you said, there's some who are schools which are absolutely amazing. They've got the staff, they've got the resources. There's other schools that don't have the staff, don't have the resources.
mm,
And when you don't have that and you've got a child with additional needs, I feel like sometimes they try and mold the child to be more neurotypical, and you
mm,
can't do that. You
no,
can't do that.
no,
And that's when they do start to regress and they find that the behaviour gets
mm,
worse,
mm,
and things like that. We're really fortunate that we've got an amazing school, which is a specialist school, and it's got
mm,
the facilities and support that he needs. Now, like you said, it's like a postcode lottery. Not everyone's going to have that on their doorstep, and we're
mm,
really fortunate that we do. So what
mm,
happens to those people who don't have that? What are the options for them? There doesn't seem to
mm,
be many options.
mm,
Um, and that's what breaks my heart, and that's what's really sad,
mm,
because it's almost like we're saying that there's a hierarchy when it comes to children
mm,
and abilities, and we're going to push and encourage those neurotypical children, but those who don't fit into a certain tick box, it's kind of easy to just ignore them.
mm. But I have found that if the parent is very strict on top
Mm-hmm.
of the school, there, I mean, for example, I was teaching in a special needs school, and this child's meant to get speech and language therapy regularly, and is on his EHC plan. He's meant to get one-to-one support, and he wasn't getting it. And his parent came into the school and said, "I need to have a meeting with the head teacher because my child's meant to be getting this, and he's not getting it." So from the point that she came into the school, she knew what her rights were. She came into the
Mm-hmm.
school, she sat down, she said, "If you guys aren't giving my child what he needs, I'm going to take it further." From that point, they started giving him the speech and language therapy. As hard as it is, and as much as it might feel like, oh, I'm being a burden on the school, sometimes you just have to do
Mm-hmm.
that because your child deserves
Yeah.
it. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's just, even though the school might not have resources, they should still try and find a way to make sure your child is
Absolutely.
and even if it's demanding what homework is. I'm speaking to a parent on the phone, and her child's in mainstream school, and they were giving him the homework that they're giving the mainstream kids, and he's doing CBC words. He's not doing that work. So why are you giving him that homework? And I was just kind of helping her draft an email because she was like, I don't know what to say to them, and I said, well, tell him that this is what is on his EAC plan. This is the homework that he should be getting. This work is too
Mm-hmm.
hard for him. give him different work. And sometimes you just have to be that person that's just, well, this isn't right, I'm going to stand up and make sure that my child gets what's right. And I know it's really hard, and I know it's also not fair that typical children, parents don't have to do that. But I think it also makes you into a stronger person. I think everything in life that comes for a reason. And I think children with additional needs are blessings that make you into a stronger person. So I think, as you said, you become an author because of your child. And I think that is in itself is a blessing. Like, would you have taken that journey if you didn't have water?
Absolutely not.
You know what I mean? So it's like, it's definitely a blessing. And
I think it just like makes you more a kinder, empathetic, understanding person as well. All the values that we want to teach our children, we become it as well. Definitely, definitely. And they are a huge blessing. Every child is a blessing, but we need to see them as a neurotypical child and a child with disabilities are equally amazing, special people. And that's what we should be teaching at a young age. That they are different, but they're equally special. It's really important, but unfortunately there's not enough of it. There's more focus on other things, and not about the world around us, because the world is diverse. Look how many 8 billion people on the planet, all completely different, all different socioeconomic backgrounds, all different abilities, like hair, eye colour, skin, everything. Like, this is what we should be talking about, so that as we grow up, we see everyone as equals, and we're not having to write books like mine. Do you know what I mean? And so when people say, "No, like the world is really diverse," there's no need for like books like mine. Someone did actually say that to me, and I was like, well, if it was so diverse, why am I having to write a book where on the front cover it says autism friendly? Why am I having to write that if the world is, this is the view that some people have, because their view is very much tunnel vision and everything's fine. That's not that's not reality though, is it? The reality is that we have different people of all different shapes, sizes, colour, ages, abilities, and this is what we should be championing. This is what we should be celebrating. Shouldn't have to search the internet high and low for, I shouldn't have to Google what should I do when I've just received my child's autism diagnosis. Do you know what I mean? It's like I shouldn't have to be Googling that. And the fact of the matter is that there's so many people who are still in the same position, which should be highlighting that there is an issue there and there's a need. So
well, I just want to say that you are amazing, and this conversation has been so good. I love speaking to you because you've got so much insight, and it's always just a great conversation.
We'll do it again soon.